Hello everyone and welcome to Camp YA and happy Book Lovers Day. My name is Lorna and I'll be hosting an extra special Book Lovers panel with some extra special authors. Would you like to go around and introduce yourselves?
Sure.
Yeah.
Do you want me to introduce myself first? Hi.
Sure.
I'm J.R. Johansson. I have 5 books out. My 6th book comes out in August 25th. So like in 2 weeks. And I write YA YA thrillers. And that's me.
Nice. Alice, would you like to go next?
Yeah. Hi, guys. Good morning or afternoon, wherever you are. My name is Elise Arden, and I am the author of the Casket Girl series. The first 3 books are out. The 4th book comes out later this year. And I have a graphic novel in the late spring of next year, which is from the DC universe. And this is one of the very early concept sketches behind me. So I'm excited about that as well. Thanks for having me.
Sorry, I think your audio was a bit behind, but yeah. Savita, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Savita Calhan, and I'm the author of The Girl in the Broken Mirror, That Asian Kid, and a thriller, The Long Weekend. And it's great to be here, so thank you for asking me.
I'm so excited to meet you all. I have your books all over here in a nice pile that I was resting my phone on, but not anymore. Thank you for introducing yourselves. That's great. So now, as it is Book Lovers Day, which is best day in my opinion, apart from my birthday, obviously, I have some questions to ask you, if that's all right. So the first question I would like to ask is there a defining moment from your adolescence or even your adulthood that spawned your love of books? Savita, would you like to go first?
Okay. So when I was growing up, we couldn't afford to buy any books. But my dad always used to take us to the library every Saturday morning. And the Saturday mornings became in our family like the best morning. We weren't really allowed to go anywhere else because my parents were very strict, very traditional Indians. So our outing on a Saturday was something we looked forward to. But when I was 12, I had finished reading all the books in the children's library, and I wanted to join the adult library. I was too young. I tried anyway, so I went to see the librarian there, Mrs. Stevens. She was very stern, very formidable. I was only a little 12-year-old. And she said, "What do you want to borrow?" And I said, "Well, I want to borrow The Lord of the Rings and The Crake and Wakes by John Wyndham." And she said, "No, well, you have to come back. You can't borrow those books until you're 14, and that's when you can join the library." So I just kept pestering her, so I'd go back every week. And eventually, she relented and let me borrow Lord of the Rings and The Crake and Wakes. And I returned those the following week, and I said to her, "Oh, can I have 2 other books?" She said, "What are they?" So she said, "Okay, you can borrow those 2." So I borrowed those 2, and I took them back the following week. This carried on for a while, and by the end of it, she actually gave me a library card. And that moment when I got that adult library card, it was like a moment of pure freedom, and I could read anything I wanted. She wasn't going to vet them anymore. That was my moment of my childhood.
That reminds me of Matilda. That's brilliant. Jen, do you have a similar experience?
For me, I think it was just watching my mom. Like, we didn't read books as a family, really. But she had this massive bookshelf downstairs that was just full of different books, most of which I was told I was not allowed to read. Same. But she loved reading, and she always seemed like she was most relaxed when she had time in her schedule to read. And I kind of loved that. And so from the moment I had a library card, we had a library that was close enough to walk to. So in the summer, I would go there like every week and get new books. And I always was looking forward to the day when I was old and to like take some ones from Mom's shut. she didn't want me to get into those for quite a while, but yeah, I think it was all about just like seeing how much it changed her and made her happy and relaxed when she got time to read.
Yeah, hopefully books make you relax. Hope, well, except for thrillers, that's what they're for. Elise, do you have a similar experience?
Yeah, I think that my experience is pretty similar to both of you guys. And I think it's interesting. I'm assuming, hopefully correctly, that we're possibly all kind of from the same generation, age-wise. I'll be dating myself a little bit, I guess. But my access to books was very similar as far as the library, the school library, the public library. Although I don't ever remember having any sort of age restrictions or issues with that. And I think one of the big differences now versus when I was growing up, and maybe you guys have a similar experience and want to comment, there weren't really YA books, young adult books. It kind of went from like children's books to adult books. And my reading experience, I think, definitely is representative of that. The only real kind of like YA books I can remember are ironically like horror thrillers. So you have like the R.L. Stein, Fear Street books, and Christopher Pike and Lois Duncan. Those are the only sort of like young adult books I really even remember existing. So I read like anything that I could access to. So if I was I grew up in New Orleans, and so if I was kind of at my parents' house or the libraries here, I read Anne Rice when I was a kid. I read Stephen King. But if I was at my grandmother's house for the summer, like Rudolph or a Harlequin romance, there was really no parental supervision, I guess. And my librarian at school definitely knew that I was an advanced reader and not only let me, but kind of suggested books all throughout. And when I was a teenager, I worked at a coffee shop that was right next to a used bookstore. And the owner would just let me go in and trade books and bring them back and then just take a new one as if it was a library. And I only remembered that actually when you brought up the Lord of the Rings, because that was how I read Lord of the Rings when I was a teenager, because he was like, oh, I'll borrow this one, and I would read it in a couple of days and bring it back and get the next one. So I just feel like I read whatever was available to me. And so it's really funny now seeing all the conversation around books, and it's like, well, I don't read books with love triangles. I don't read books with this. I don't read books with such a different world.
It's good that we all have a collective love of Lord of the Rings. That is top choices. I was wondering, how did you all reflect your love of reading in your books? Just off of that, Jen, would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure. So I have a book, a story that I'm still working on, but there seems to be like always one character at least who is just absolutely passionate about books in my stories. And then the one that I'm working on right now has the main character lives with her grandparents in like an apartment type thing above their bookstore that they own. The entire feeling of like being connected to the books in that way, like, and being able to describe from her point of view a lot of the things that I feel about being around books, just like the way they smell and like having them in your hands and like all of that. I always have a book lover in basically every story.
That's good. I think book lovers are the best characters. At least, what do you think?
this isn't a spoiler. I don't know that there's any characters that like particularly love reading or love books in the Cassie Girl series, but books and old books are definitely constant symbol in the book. So the series is about witches. So books and written histories and oral histories are generally important to stories with witches in it. So every character in the book or in the series has some kind of important book in their family, whether that is like a very traditional home or it is a dress with like cereals on it, the story of their family. That exists very important to each characters and to the plot. So I would guess that is the way. So each one of them had to find their book and discover it, and then kind of use it to solve the mysteries and stuff like that in the book.
That's so interesting. That's so cool. Savita, what do you think?
I think, well, in my writing, there's always a character who is passionate about books. In the long weekend, it's about two 11-year-old boys. The mum of the main character, Sam, she puts a bookcase outside the bathroom he shares with his sister, Tabitha, to encourage him to read, because he wasn't much of a reader. But because he sat outside the bathroom waiting for his sister to finish, he ends up picking out the books from the bookshelf and ends up sitting there for hours just reading the books. And in that Asian kid, Jeevan is a secret reader. He's a bit of a cool kid. So he's always reading at home. And his best friend, Dred, is a huge reader who will read absolutely anything he lays his hands on, even pamphlets and leaflets and brochures. He'll just read everything. But the person I think who most loves books in my writings is Jay in here. And she has to run away from home at one point, and she has to leave all her precious belongings behind, and her precious belongings are all her books. And she can only carry one book with her, and that's Tess the D'Urberville, so she puts that in her rucksack and has to leave all the rest of them behind. So yeah, I think my love of books and my passion for books definitely comes out through all of my characters.
It's great that you all mentioned characters reading other people's books, because I was wondering how being a fan of other people's works and books, not just books, television shows, movies, I guess The Lord of the Rings fits in all of those categories, but I was wondering how it affects your own work. Savita, would you like to go first?
I don't think any of it really affects my work. I don't read YA when I'm writing YA, because I just find that's too intrusive. But I read so widely. I read and watch so widely. So I love fantasy. Obviously, is my first love, and I love dystopian. I love crime thrillers. So it doesn't really impact on my work. But obviously, there are influences from all those things that go into my writing and into the different characters in the books.
Jen, what do you think?
I'm highly influenced by everything, and I'm somewhat similar in that I can't read something that's in the same kind of vein as whatever I'm writing. It just kind of gets all muddled in my head. But before I'm going to start writing a new project, I often will pick a story that I believe is kind of the same vibe or the same kind of feel to it atmospherically as what I'm going to be writing. And it just kind of helps me like center myself, I guess, into that kind of mode. So I might read something that's similar before I begin a story. I do similar things too with TV shows. Like I might watch something. I watched way too much Criminal Minds TV show before I wrote Cut Me Free, one of my books. So like there's definitely some of that feel in that story, and it kind of leaks through that way.
That's so fascinating, at least to me, because it never occurred to me that reading YA while writing YA might be intrusive, but maybe I have to keep that in mind. Elise, what do you think?
Totally the same. So I don't read anything similar to what I'm writing while I'm writing it, and it's unusual if you're writing a long series. So I've been working on this series for quite a while, so there were even certain TV shows that I remember, like, I had been watching and then I stopped watching. So that would happen. Some of them. So it's interesting. I finally wrapped this up. Although I'm getting close enough to the end with this particular series that I feel like I could probably start watching and reading whatever, because it's everything that is going to happen and it is so already defined. But I read a lot of nonfiction, a lot of history, which I think certainly feeds into the writing as well. And yeah, I do feel like TV shows probably affected TV and film, probably more film, I guess, when I'm thinking about like the 80s and early 90s and horror in that time. I'm sure definitely kind of affected just my overall storytelling. My mom always tells the story of when I was 2 years old and the Poltergeist movie would always come on TV, and it was like my favorite thing in the world. And I would just stand by the TV and crack up laughing whenever the ghosts were like throwing things around the house. And she said that she's like, I feel like a horrible parent that I'm letting this like 2-year-old watch this movie, but it brings me so much joy that I just couldn't turn it off. So yeah, so I think that that all of these things influence us, not just as writers, but as people and storytellers, for sure. I mean, I don't think she or I would know, that 2 decades later, more than that, I would be writing about ghosts and things flying across rooms.
And I love the story about the Poltergeist. That's my favorite Camp YA moment. I'm going to treasure that forever. Speaking of loving things, so the good thing about books is that there's a massive community around it on Twitter, on Instagram, on YouTube, like in real life. I was wondering, where do you think the bookish community will be in 30 years? Alice, do you want to start this one?
Sure. I mean, I think just more and more connected, I guess, which seems impossible already with the amount of connectivity. And it's just so interesting to think about, going back to the earlier part of the conversation, growing up reading was such an isolated experience, because so much of it was just done at the library or, from books from the library at my grandma's house by myself, almost that whole digging through the attic by yourself, finding books, reading them, never talking to them with anyone. I don't think there was a single book growing up that I ever discussed with another person, unless it was maybe the librarian returning the book. So it's just so wild now. But yeah, I just think it will be more. I think that we're in a weird time right now where we're kind of learning how to adjust to all the connectivity. So that has its positives and negatives. So I'm hoping 30 years from now, that's quite an entire generation or two down the road, that it will be more inherent and the positivity and like naturalness of it more outweighs the negativity and kind of the horrible bits of it. So that's me, hopefully just not being optimistic.
Savita and Jen, I know you both write amazing thrillers, so this is to both of you the same question, but towards thrillers. Do you think thrillers will change as a result? Do you think the bookish community around thrillers will change in 30 years because of the time we're in right now?
So, like, are you talking about because of like the pandemic and stuff?
Yeah,
Or
sorry,
are you
I
talking
didn't
about
phrase.
just okay?
I didn't
No,
use
no,
that correctly.
you're fine. No, you're fine. I just wanted to make sure I was answering my question. Yeah, I think it's really interesting right now. Like, I've talked to several of my author friends, and all of us are kind of like, well, I'm writing this project, but like, I don't really know how to approach the world. Like, if it's set in the real world, you know, do you address the fact that this happened? You know, is this something that is just a time in the past that they refer to? Like, is it something that's still going on? Like, do you set it during this time frame? Like, there's a lot of different decisions that you have to make when it comes to books that have anything to do with the real world right now. That seems to be a common problem for people who write contemporary romance, some of my friends, or you know, for me, like one or two of the thrillers that I've been working on are set in the real world, and it's like, how do I do that? So I don't know this one's about that's what I'm going to work on, because that's totally doesn't matter. But yeah, I feel like there's probably going to be a lot of books that deal with thrillers specifically, pandemics, big major national catastrophes, or world war events that kind of unite or pull people apart. I think there's probably going to be a lot of books that kind of deal with that in the future, because this is something that like none of us alive right now have ever really experienced anything like this. So it's bound to change kind of the way that we look at our ideas and stuff.
Yeah. Vita, do you have similar views or do you think differently?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if you look at the moment, dystopian novels are suddenly really, really popular. You know, as if real life isn't enough. People are watching more dystopian films and reading more dystopian books. My books are kind of set in contemporary world, and I don't know how I would reflect this period of time in any future writing that I do. I don't know whether I would ignore it or work it in somehow. Um, I know lots of my writer friends have been struggling to focus and concentrate on writing. For some of them, it's felt a bit pointless. Publishers are not commissioning books as much. If you're launching a book now, it's really tough to do that online. Um, so I don't really know how it's going to go. I mean, with the other question, bookish community in 30 years' time, I think that's really challenging. Actually, I think it's going to be quite tough because I don't know about in the States, but in the UK, there's been a huge cut in libraries. They're disappearing around the UK, and in schools, there's not that reading time anymore. Libraries have become information hubs. So young readers are not being encouraged, and they do need to be encouraged to find the right book, you know, to have that bit of space, that bit of time to explore books. So I do worry about the future of the whole book community and what it means.
Can I
It's great that you
actually?
brought up. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to say, can I actually say about that? One other thing that I think is interesting about this time is I think everybody is learning to connect and communicate even more so in different ways than they ever have before. And I think that that will affect the bookish community going forward too. Like, I think that more and more, you know, book clubs have always been like online too, but they've been very popular to like meet in person, and a lot of the people that were in book clubs previously that met in person like can't do that, and they're bringing it online, and it's just there's a lot more connectivity, and I think we're all kind of learning new ways to connect with people that are close and far away, as this shows here.
Yeah.
I think that those kinds of opportunities are going to continue even after this.
But can I just add a point to that? I run a teen reading group in my local library. So I really want to give back and encourage young readers. So we've been trying to do that online. But with the reading group, when it takes place in the library, it's full of banter. kids are encouraging each other, recommending books to each other. The age group in my group, they're from 10 years old to 17. So they're constantly, the older ones are recommending books to the younger ones. But we try that on Zoom. It just does not have the same impact. They can't, because it's one person has to speak at a time, rather than, all of you talking, and that contact is very different. And for them,
yeah, I found that personally in
I can
lessons.
see both of those things. No, sorry, it's hard to. I think our technological situation is illustrating exactly what you're saying. But I think I'm seeing both of those things here. So our local bookstore book club, which is primarily adult or exclusively adult, I think we're seeing it expand quite a bit, and not just with new people, but there's been hundreds of people in the course of the years have joined, stopped, fallen out, because of life and work and all of those things. But now that it's online and it's a little bit less chaotic, maybe to fit into your schedule, or maybe everyone's schedules are less chaotic because of the situation, we're seeing much bigger turnout. It's probably also easier for adults to communicate with each other in these kind of groups because we're more used to doing it at work and whatnot, although I can't say it's as fun, kind of really, really listening and being like, oh, can I talk? Is it cutting out? All of that. But it's a weird double-edged sword because I do also worry about the libraries going away and the reading time in schools being less important and the curriculum and just like all the critical thought that goes along with that discussion. At the same time, we have platforms like Wattpad and similar ones that are kind of exploding, and kids and young people and teenagers are really gravitating towards those things, and it kind of like goes at their speed and with what they've grown up with and learned, and is very accommodating to them. So there's, kind of these things somewhat filling that space, but I don't think that they are the same thing. Yeah, I definitely want the perfect world where we kind of have all of it,
Yeah, I definitely found that what you were saying about the energy being sucked out of Zoom calls, I definitely found that during school. It was just completely different vibe, even though it was the same people and the same teacher, just completely different. Following on, I was wondering what book means the most to you, all of you, as a reader, a writer, and presumably a human. The floor is open. I don't mind who talks first. Difficult question, I know.
This is not a hard one for me, actually. I have there are two books that have always been close to my heart. The first one is obviously The Lord of the Rings. When I first started writing, which I didn't actually start writing until my mid-30s, the first thing I wrote was a 600,000 word fantasy epic, and I built a whole new world. I wrote it all by hand because this was back in the early mid-90s, and I didn't have a proper laptop then or a computer, so I wrote it all by hand in millions of notebooks. And I had an architect friend who drew up maps for me to scale. I mean, it was a beautiful thing. I absolutely loved writing it. And that was the first thing I wrote. And that's entirely because of my love of Lord of the Rings, and which I have read 20 or 30 times.
I'm trying to imagine how many notebooks it would take to handwrite 600,000 words.
A lot.
An entire wall in your house.
A lot. A lot. And then later, actually, I did try it all. That took months.
Oh my god!
I know. And
wow.
The second book is a book called A Fine Balance by Rohinton Mystery, which when I discovered and read, I absolutely adored, and I've been recommending it to everybody. I don't have a copy here with me because I've just lent it out to someone. So it's about four disparate people in India set in a very tumultuous time during the emergency rule, and they're very different people, but it's about history and about hope, about despair. It's full of tragedy. It's very epic in the same way that Lord of the Rings is epic, and there is that good versus evil, the whole of that in that striving to find happiness, overcoming the evil. So yes, so that's the second book. So those two are very, very close to my heart.
I must insist that you publish a 600,000 word
Oh.
adventure. I will pre-order it. I will buy it, whatever it takes.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I would probably say for me there's two series. One I read, honestly, there's probably 20 to 30 books in it. I'm not even sure but I read it growing up, and I read like every book multiple times. Just the world of it was one of my favorite things. Like, and I don't even know, honestly, like I've met very few other people who've read them. But it was called the Xanth series by Piers Anthony. And it was just like basically this world where everyone had one magic talent, and like some of them were great and some of them were just bizarre. And it was really, really fun. And there were so many books, so many stories. And I just loved like basically living in that world growing up. I feel like I went from like Babysitter's Club, kind of like Alex was saying that I went from like Babysitter's Club to like Stephen King. Like there was no middle ground.
We're the same generation.
Yeah. So that was like one that was like a fantasy, but it was still like a little lighter and a little like it was really fun. And I loved like having that. That was almost like my version of YA when I was growing up. So like I loved that series. The other one is just like Harry Potter, the entire world, the way that it was brought to life, just the evolution of the story. It kind of reignited in some ways my love of fantasy, I guess, in that way. So for me, I think those are the two sets of books that are probably most important to me.
Elise, top those responses. Go. This for me is an impossible question, not just a hard question. I don't feel like I feel like there's been lots of different books that like at that exact moment in time kind of moved me in a way that felt impossible, but I might not feel that way about the book now. So I definitely think, growing up in New Orleans and reading Anne Rice at such a young age, that whole world, the world of the maker, which is with Fact World, definitely, I think influenced not necessarily even like my paranormal love, but just the love of setting and the love for my hometown definitely contributed to that. So it wasn't really a surprise when I started writing about it, and I wasn't living here at the time. I was mostly in London. But I would say maybe the book that I've bought the most for people or like have borrowed, so I keep having to buy it and replace it, would be We See That by Francesca Leah Block. It's like quintessentially 90s, like quintessentially late 90s. And it has a very similar yet opposite kind of vibe as, say, like Interview with a Vampire, because it's in LA and it's full of sunshine and pink skies and beaches, but the love of setting is still very much there. And I think it made me really fall in love with Los Angeles in a way that if I hadn't read that, I never would have experienced, because I feel like I only felt those things in Los Angeles because of the book. And it's also like abstract and like kind of magical realism and, a little bit boundary pushing for its time. And it has very lyrical prose, so like all things that I really like. I don't know now, like if I read it now, if I was saying super deep connection, but like at the time, it was kind of like being in a dream for me. I definitely still love the book, and I love all of Princess William Black's writing. So
those are all amazing responses. I particularly love that when I asked for one book, or some of you gave us two, which is just such a book lovers thing to do. It's in the spirit of the day.
Well, it's too hard. It puts too much like importance on a single piece of work. You know, some people have that. Like some people's Lord of the Rings are like, this is my defining being, you know, or Harry Potter. But I don't know. I don't feel that about any one single piece of art, you know, whether it is a movie or a book or an album, you know, or something. And especially because we change, you know, as we grow. So yeah, too difficult.
Don't worry, it is highly relatable to, I think, everyone watching. We've come to the portion of the panel where we've got some audience questions, if that's all right for you. And this will be open for, I think, whoever would like to answer them can. Martina asks, if you could assemble a best friend squad of characters, who would you choose? You are allowed to choose your own characters. I know I would.
Well, in that Asian kid, it's about Jeevan, who is this 15-year-old boy who's very smart and gets into trouble with one of his teachers. He has got a group of friends around him who are just amazing, and I think they are. If I was back in school, I would want to have them as my best friends because they just work brilliantly together, absolutely brilliantly.
That's great. Does anyone else have a super squad?
That's hard.
I mean,
That's a hard question too.
It's a hard question.
Yeah, it's a really hard question because you want to start like analyzing every book that you've read. I mean, I love the squad in my series. I would very happily like be a part of their coven. And also, I mean, it's a little redundant since I just said it, but we see that has a very eclectic and bizarre group of teens in it. I would jump into that pool any day.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I feel like ultimately I would probably just like pick and choose my favorite characters from like 20 different books.
Right.
Just be like, okay, you, and also you, and maybe you, and like probably the like Hermione would be in it, and like I think probably like from my own books, there are two sibling best friends from in the Insomnia series that one of them is like always everyone's favorite character. Like when they read the book, they're like, oh, this one character, I love this character. So that definitely would probably be he would be part of my squad, I guess, from mine. But like, yeah, no, I definitely would choose like different people from all different stories. There were several people in the Zan series that I would pick, really mad talent, you know. So I feel like I would end up, instead of picking like a group of people from one story, I probably would end up picking a whole bunch of different people from different stories.
This is magical. We can pick and choose. I think that's allowed. I've just seen that Ashley has joined.
Sorry, there was miscommunications with the time, and I am woefully late.
Would you like to introduce yourself?
All good.
I would love to. My name is Ashley Poston. I am the author of the Once Upon a Con series, Geekarella, Princess and the Fangirl, and as of Tuesday, Bookish and the Beast. So that's me.
Nice. Yeah, we're just in the bit of the panel where we're doing audience questions, so you can feel free to join in with that.
Perfect. Sorry about that, guys.
It's all right. The more the merrier, I think. So George asks, if you could visit a fictional world, where would you go?
Me or anyone?
Anyone?
I'll jump in. One world that I really love because I love Southern Gothic is the world of beautiful creatures. And I also really like the Rogue series, but it has all this stuff I love the Southern cities and different magic and monsters and all that stuff. So I would gladly take a vacation there.
There's a book that a friend of mine actually wrote, but it's called Relic, and it is set like in an old like Wild West U.S. and basically the idea of the world is that instead of dinosaurs, there were magical creatures before. Like they're all extinct now, but they have like their bones of dragons, and they still contain magical properties of the beast that it belongs to. So like there's this massive like underground trade of like these magical creature fossils and stuff, and like it's such a cool world. Like I'm fascinated by it. So I would
That's
probably
cool.
go with that.
What is the book?
It's called Relic.
It's
it's by Renee Collins. So very, very good book. Highly recommend.
I would choose the world of Percy Jackson because I would love to be like sired by by like a god or whatever and be a demigod. I think it'd be so cool. And to go to like a half-blood camp, I wouldn't like to have my my life, threatened all the time. But I think it'd be fun.
Well, when I was growing up, I wanted to go and live in Avonlea with Anne Shirley of Anne of Green Gables. So I wanted to live in a house like hers, and that's where I wanted to go and live. And then later on, it was Narnia. I really wanted to go through a wardrobe and find that whole world, that whole amazing world. And I think I still would like to end up going to somewhere like Narnia, somewhere magical, where anything is possible.
Yes, that's in the spirit of the day. In books, anything is possible, which is why I love them so much.
Yeah.
So Melinda asks, what's your favorite experience with the bookish community? Again, this is an open question.
The fans. I really like the readers. They're pretty great.
I've had a great time actually with doing lots of blog tours, and I had a couple in the States as well. And the bookish community were absolutely so supportive, really fantastic to work with. So yeah, I've had lots of really good experiences with the bookish community.
I would say the same. I mean, I think the fandom is definitely the most exciting part of it. I think one of my favorite things for the Casca Girl series are the conspiracy theories by the fandom. I always enjoy reading them and seeing the debates and the argument and the evidence that people store to defend their theories. So that's always been something that I've loved about this series, writing it and seeing reader reactions and how they kind of interact with each other and the material.
I think the same. Like it's always the fans are so fun, and the passion that they have for the stories. It I don't know. It makes me feel like I'm with my people. Like they get my love of books. But like I always think it's funny because like my books, they're thrillers. They're somewhat dark, and I often get emails or people come up at signings and they're just like, are you okay? I'm concerned about what happened to you in your past. I'm fine. This is fiction. It's okay. But yeah, it's always so fun interacting with fans.
Well, I love interacting with authors, so I completely get that. I think that's sure. Which is why I missed. So we've just had another question that I think follows on from this nicely. So it's, do the fans ever influence what happens in a book? Ashley, would you like to go first?
Sure. For me, since I write fandom-oriented books, yeah, fans definitely influence like what goes into the books. Like for Princess and the Fangirl, I really took a lot of cues from the Star Wars fandom and how like toxic that fandom is sometimes. And for Bookish and the Beast, I definitely like zeroed in on like the unlikable villain. Like it's like, oh, you can't like villains. Villains are terrible. If you like a villain, you're a bad person. And I kind of like dissected that. Because fiction is fiction and real life is real life, and like we can definitely separate the two. So yeah, I do take a lot of like cues from real life fandoms, and I also put in all of the things that I love, like the community and like the like found family aspect of it. Like when you go into a message board and you find basically your like long lost family, because they're also accepting and wonderful, and I love that kind of community, especially in the different fandoms, and how like even when like the TV show or the fandom itself like dies, like Teen Wolf, like no one talks about it anymore, but I still have friends that I made from the Teen Wolf fandom. So so I love like that kind of like Everlife, I guess, where like your friendships expand like further than the fandom itself, and so I love that part.
Savita, what do you think?
I don't think fans directly influence happens in my books, but my writing is quite dark. So because I know I'm writing for teenagers and young adults, I do know that they prefer to have endings that are not hopeless, not miserable, that is major death at the end. So I do try and write bearing that in mind, that an ending has to have some hope, no matter how sad or dark the story is. That I would give those kids some kind of hopeful ending. I know when my son read this book where I think every character dies in the book. Every character dies. It came out about 10 years ago. And he was so angry at the ending. He was so angry. He threw the book across the room, and he was a big reader. He said, "Well, what was the point of that? They're all dead." So I know, and from my work with my teenagers at my library reading group, that they all prefer some kind of hopeful ending. So I do try and give them that, if even if the rest of the story is really dark and tragic.
Elise, what do you think?
It's always an interesting question. My easy answer is no. Do fans like influence my energy and influence my moods? Absolutely, are encouraging. But there's never been, and even with me reading all the conspiracy theories, and all of that, there's never been one of them or a person or an individual or a group that's really like influenced me in the way that I've changed something in the story or series or even my beta readers. So, but it's it gives me a lot of joy and a lot of excitement. And just from a more general fandom, what Ash was saying, I definitely agree. I've met some of my best friends, in different fandoms or writing groups or on Wattpad, on different, message boards, stuff like that. So it's definitely an important part of my life and an important part of writing and reading. That was exactly kind of something I've directly kind of changed the course of the book or changed anything in the book or anything like that.
Yeah, I think it's all great that we've mentioned making friends online, which I think is very important in the 21st century, because especially when people have unhealthy atmospheres around them, online friends are very important. Jen, I know your books are quite dark, so I'm hoping the answer is no, but do the fans ever inspire your books?
I mean, no, I like not in that way, but like similar to Savita, I always keep in mind like my readers when I'm writing. I will say that one of my books, and I won't say which one, I killed a character that when I sent it to my agent and when I sent it to my beta readers, they all just basically wrote back and said, "This is unacceptable."
That's happened to me too.
Yeah. I was like, fine. So yeah, I definitely think that keeping in mind the hope is really important, and I feel like I feel like with thrillers, with horror, like you get the chance to explore dark themes and dark situations in a safe environment, and I feel like when you go through all that, like you need something rewarding at the end. Like if everybody dies, I can see why he threw the book across the room. Like I probably would too. So yeah, I definitely keep that in mind when I'm writing.
We've nearly run out of time, but we've got the perfect audience question to finish off. I'm so excited. The question is, what is the book you wish you could have written, from Stephen?
I wish I could have written Twilight. No, just kidding.
Oh, I see. Okay, I see.
No. Yes, but no.
Don't we all?
I don't know. Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. I wish I would have written that.
Yeah, good one.
Yeah, Jen, what do you think?
I always want to write stuff that I don't write. So like the let's see, what's it called? The Distance Between Us by Casey West is like such a happy book. And it makes me happy when I read it. So I think that's probably one that I would have loved written. It makes me happy.
Elise, what do you think?
This is a hard one. It's kind of like one of those questions where you're quickly trying to go through every book in your library. So many of my answers was because I've just been looking over in the other room, and whatever sign I can see from all the way over here, I'm like, that one. But I feel like there's lots of books where I've had moments like that. And then when I'm reading one of the books that I've read in this pandemic, which is probably something that other people read 20 years ago, was on The Secret History by Donna Tartt. And I definitely had moments of that. I was reading it. It's because one of my mentors, one of my old mentors, when the first book had come out, kind of made a reference to that book when she was kind of critiquing mine. And I was like, oh, I need to read that. And I finally did get around to reading it, I guess, thank you, pandemic. And I did have a little bit of that, like, yeah.
Oh, Savita's come back. Good, because I was about to ask you. What is the book you wish you could have written?
I think that's really, 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 really tough, because every time I read a brilliant book, I wish I had written that. So I mean, the duology, Six of Crows, I love that. I wish I'd written that. I've just finished reading Where the Crawdads Sing by Julia Owens, which is such a beautiful book. And I really wish I could write in that style, in that way. I don't think it's me, but I really do wish I could write like that. The other book I've just recently finished was Jim Patrol on the Purple Line, and I wish I could write like that. It's in India, so I wish I could actually write a story that was set in India. Probably fantasy though. I might do fantasy.
Because I know you wrote The Girl in the Broken Mirror is about Indian people, but set in London.
Yes. So I grew up here, so yeah. It's set in
well, I'm really sorry, it's so sad. I don't want to, but we have to finish. So will we go around and tell us where you can we can find you? Ashley, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at ashposton, or on Instagram at _ashposton, because someone is sitting on my name. It's very frustrating. Sorry I came in late again, guys. I'm kicking myself. I'm sorry. I'm very bad at math.
Elise, where can we find you?
I'm super easy. I'm just Elise Arden across the board on the internet.
Solid. Jen, where can we find you?
So I'm J.R. Johansson on Twitter and Instagram. I think I'm author J.R. Johansson on like Facebook. I actually have a Twitch channel, and it's author gamer girl. So that's me.
Perfect.
And yeah, the other thing I didn't actually show any of my books, but this one is the one that comes out on August 25th. It's just this is actually the Spanish version of it because randomly I have that one here. But anyway, I love the cover. It's my favorite, and the English version has the same cover. It's called To the Bone, so that comes out on August 25th. But yeah, you can find me in any of those places.
Savita, where can we find you?
I'm on Twitter, so it's at Savita Calhan. I'm on Instagram. I think it's the same, Calhan. There may be an underscore between Savita and Calhan. I have a Facebook page, an author page. So yeah, I'd love for you to getting in touch.
Thank you all so much for joining in. It's been my absolute pleasure to host you. You're all
Thank you,
absolutely
Lorna.
lovely.
Thank you. You were wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Make sure you're in with us until 7 o'clock tonight. Check out our marketplace where you can get discounts and offers. They're all really cool. I really want them all. Make sure, do follow us on social media and check out our charity Room to Read and make sure you donate to them. Thank you all so much for coming, and I hope to see you again very soon.
Oh, no, thank you. Thank you.